If you ask me, did the Wild West exist in America like it is portrayed in movies? Then my answer is no. Not really, and yes to some degree. Towns were few and far between. Men were permitted to carry handguns in many or most of the towns. Saloons were ubiquitous, and every town had one if it consisted a large tent with a flatboard resting on barrels. There were gunfighters of the day that were infamous, notorious, and feared. Among them were people like Clay Allison, John Wesley Hardin, Dallas Stonemeyer, and William Hitchcock. Prostitution was very common and only began to be outlawed in the early 90s. The dance hall women that are universally depicted in Western movies and television shows were in reality almost lawless prostitutes. There were famous brothels in the larger towns, frequently owned by women, and a number of the women owners were well thought of in the community or at minimum tolerated. They were not outcast as is commonly depicted during the settling phase of the Old West up to the 1880 and 1890s. Many of the wives in the towns and surrounding ranches had earlier on been prostitutes. This was fairly common to women who did not come from families with property or wealth. Virtually no one dressed in the manner that Western movies commonly depict. Men almost universally wear handlebar, mustache, or close to it, with few expectations. Everyone wore hats, but not the Stetson that is associated with the Old West today. All roads were unpaved, which means that they were uneven, muddy, and filled with manure. The smell of horses was pervasive. Western clothing was quite similar to Eastern clothing. Clothing was baggy and frequently ill-fitting. Men wore bowler hats, derbies, and caps. They did not have well-fitting jeans and Western-style shirts that are depicted today. Violence and shootings were not infrequent. They were rare and mostly occurred in the wild cattle-stocked towns like Dawes City. There were no quick-draw gunfights or very few. The only historically recorded gunfight was the one between William Hitchcock and Davis Stark. Generally, gunfights were shootings in which one participant fired at the other at will, as in an informal variation of the classic type duel. There is no issue of speed involved. If called out or threatened, the shooter who drew and fired was frequently held to have shot in self-defense, even though the other, now dead opponent had either drawn their weapon or even known a fight was about to happen. John Wesley Hardin, for example, was shot from behind by El Paso town constable John Silman. Warren Earp was killed in a gunfight with John Boyd in Wilcox, Arizona. There was no quick draw issue. Earp told Boyd to go get his gun. Boyd did so. Earp came out of the saloon and Boyd, seeing him, fired 4 times, missing each time as Earp walked toward him. Earp never fired at all. Boyd told him that Earp had on and ordered him to stop advancing on him. But Earp continued. Boyd fired one final shot, hitting him in the chest and killing him. Earp was found to be unarmed but holding a pocket of knife in his hand. Boyd was held to have acted in self-defense. The gambling game of choice was faro not poker. There was reason why some American Indians, especially in the Southwest, were hated. It was a hatred born of fear and experience. Prior to the influx of settlers, a number of Indian tribes were warlike and commonly engaged in raids and a war with other tribes. That continued and intensified when white settlers moved in. The Commons were particularly fearsome and vicious, not simply engaging in raids. and were but in rape, mutualization, and torture of their captive, including children. The Cheyenne and Apache were not far behind. So, in some ways, the Old West is similar to movies, but mostly movies are an exaggeration and distortion of what life was actually.